Hi, I'm Meta Spencer, and today we're going to go to India. Let's go to Delhi, and let's talk with someone who is absolutely fabulous. We're going to talk to Vandana Shiva, and this is going to be a real treat for me, because this is a lady I've heard of many, many years, and I just had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours the other day who gave me all kinds of background information about Vandana, which I didn't know. So now I have a better idea of the person I'm going to be talking with, and we're probably going to talk mostly about agriculture. She was, I believe, did your PhD here in Canada. Is that right, Vandana?
I did my PhD at the University of Western Ontario after having done my MSc Honours in particle physics in India. But my passion was drawing me to the foundations of quantum theory. And at that time, Western had attracted the top minds. So no matter who I wrote to, it could be the Australians or South Africans or Israelis or Poles, they were all for 5 years in the University of Western Ontario in what they call the colloquium on quantum theory. They brought the top minds, the top mathematicians, the top logicians, the top physicists in this field, interdisciplinary field. So that's, and I write to anyone and they'd say, oh, but I am in Western, or I'm going to Western. So I spent a very, very stimulating part of my life in London, Ontario.
London, Ontario.
Along the little River Thames.
Yes. Well, I have many friends in London because it is a good university, and there's a lot of traffic between University of Toronto, where I taught until I retired about 20 years ago, and London. We kind of have a shuffle going on quite often. At least it was so in sociology. So you were in particle physics. Now that's quite a jump. I can find almost nothing that I would imagine talking about that would span the two domains. How could what earthly thing prompted you to change from particle physics to ecology?
Well, I didn't change. I just added the ecological dimension initially, but of course, beyond a point, both are very demanding, and I had to then make a choice. But 1970s, early 70s, I was leaving for Canada to take my flight, and I said, I'd go make one last trip to the mountains, and found this forest I used to trek, and the river I used to swim in gone. So that's the first time I physically, personally, emotionally experienced the loss of nature as loss of part of me. Because we'd grown up in a period when nothing was destroyed, Life was so much more stable, so much more permanent. You got up and you didn't have to face a pandemic in the morning. You didn't have to see a forest gone. So this was a shock. And then I heard about this beautiful movement called Chipko, where women were coming out and saying, we're going to hug the trees. You will have to kill us with your axe, not chainsaws, axes. You'll have to kill us before you kill the tree. And that, to me, became my other university. I always say I went to the University of Ontario for my super duper PhD on the hidden variables and non-locality in quantum theory. And I went to the Chipko University working with peasant women to learn about ecology, biodiversity, the intimate relationship between humans and nature. So what I would say connects the world of ecology and the world of quantum theory is the principle of non-separation. My PhD was on non-locality. Ecology is about non-separation from the forests, the trees, the streams, the soil, the water. That interconnectedness that the women of Chipko brought to me through their practice and knowledge was brought to me through my PhD at Western. So it is about non-separation. And if you were to ask me, what's the one single cause of all destruction, whether it be disruption of the climate or the species extinction, or the invasion into the territories of indigenous peoples, such a big problem in Canada right now, or climate change, or pandemics, chronic diseases, poverty, gender violence. At the end of it, it's all about separation and superiority. You first take what's connected, tear it apart, then put one part of the part above the other and say, men are the masters of the universe. Men are superior to women. Whites are superior to blacks. The rich automatically create wealth. Instead of recognizing, they just steal it from the earth and women and working people, the peasants, the working class. So it's all separate, superior, and all we have to do is bring it horizontal and unite.
Oh, isn't that a wonderful way of putting it? It is marvelous. Well, I absolutely, of course, who wouldn't agree with you? But it's facile to say, of course, I agree with you. But also, in a way, it's connected to what I'm feeling. The reason we have this project Save the World is because of the separateness of people working on various global threats. That we have, we think, 6 global threats that could wipe out 1 billion people each under certain circumstances. And yet the specialists working on these areas, of course, they have to specialize, but they should realize that these are interdependent and causally linked. And we need to have a place where people meet and see themselves as working on the same team to solve all of them as a comprehensive package of problems. So this notion of the complementarity and the interconnectedness of the problems that we face is the thing that preoccupies me. And it's analogous to your own thoughts about one of them is higher than the other, but we're all part of the same system.
Yeah, in an interconnected system, there is no high and there's no low. There's just interconnection. Mm-hmm. And there is no trivializing the small, right? I mean, if there's one time humanity should have woken up to the fact that largeness is not the only measure of power, look at that little virus. Totally preoccupied everyone for 2 years. So small can be very powerful, both in a positive way because we are microbes. We are walking microbes. We are viromes and biomes, and we can't make 90% of ourselves our enemy. That is part of the separation. Yeah.
And there are people who think that they're going to give us security with missiles and nuclear bombs. And it's this little, you can't even see the damn thing. It's really our worst enemy right now.
Yeah. So don't underestimate the small, either in terms of microbes, but don't underestimate the small in terms of actions. I mean, that's what I've learned in my lifetime, beginning with Chipko in the 70s, working on seed over these many years, now 34 years, is in that little seed is the universe.
Yeah, okay. That's better than poetry. Tell us about Chipko. I know, and I love the idea of Chipko, I've been to India, but I haven't met the Chipko movement in person, but I've always been inspired by it. There's something very touching about exactly that notion that first, we talk about people as tree huggers now, but the real tree huggers were these women who put their lives on the line to protect trees that really needed to be saved. And I think our audience, probably not many listeners, know what you mean by the Chipko movement. Can you tell me, and what was your relationship to those people? Did you join them, or how did you connect with when you decided, instead of coming back and going into continuing your work in particle physics, you wanted to work with the protection of nature? Tell me about that period of time.
Yeah, so of course, for me, it was so compelling because it's such a big part of me. that I took a pledge leaving India that every vacation of mine, I will come back to volunteer for the Chipko movement. So that was my role, to volunteer. So what would I do as an, urban girl studying in Canada? I realized that, there's no knowledge I bring because women know everything about the forest. Yeah, they know every species, they know every plant, they know their relationship. But I learned two things that were useful in translating what they were saying to systems of power. I knew how to speak English. They spoke Garhwali, Hindi. So I would take what they were saying and turn it into English, which is the language of the elite all over the world, including in India, because we were colonized. And the second thing is, ever since Descartes and Bacon, who quantified the world and said nature has to be subjugated and there's nothing like life in nature. And, Descartes said it's all extension, just measure it and it'll be fine. And he even said that the screaming of an animal who you're torturing is merely the creaking of a machine. Forget it. Don't even take it seriously.
I hadn't heard that quotation.
Yeah. So, Bacon, Descartes created this worldview of dead mechanistic science. And in fact, my own learning of quantum theory has made me far more sensitive about how dumb mechanistic reductionism is. It's a bad way of thinking. It is not a new epistemology. It is the absence of epistemology. It's the absence of knowing. You declare something dead and say, I don't have to know its life. If nature is dead, if the earth is dead, you don't have to think of caring for her. It's not even a role you can play. So quantification then became science, right? Mm-hmm. And being trained in science, of course, I knew how to quantify. I knew how to make graphs. I knew how to make histograms. So I take what the women were saying and turn it into English and graphs. And suddenly it was a scientific report.
That's wonderful.
Because women aren't supposed to be experts and peasants aren't supposed to be experts and ordinary people aren't supposed to know anything. So I just put my little bit of knowing English and science at the service of the Chipko movement. What was my role in the Chipko movement? Learning. A big part of it was I was a student. And I learned about how with so little women create so much working with nature. I learned, I've grown up in the Himalayan forest. My father was a forest conservator. So forests were not new to me. Nature was not new to me, but nature was, beautiful. That's it, Being in the forest was a joy. But that it could be the source of sustenance, I learned from the Chipko women. From them, I learned that ecology and economy is one in a just society. Ecology, the science of life, economy as the running of living systems come from the same roots, oikos. And for my sisters in Chipko, they were the same thing. Taking care of the earth, taking care of themselves was part of one continuum. It was not separate, it was not competing. And again, economy was not superior to ecology. If you didn't have ecology, you didn't have economy. If you didn't have the forest, you didn't have your fuel, you didn't have your food, you didn't have your river, you didn't have a spring. And they knew all this. Their science came from living in the system. And that science of experience is the nonviolent knowing. But it has been turned into non-knowing, So
to what extent were these women consciously or maybe not consciously influenced by the Gandhian tradition? Was
very, very strongly, very consciously. And I'll give you 3 links. So, Gandhi had to, and again, it shows that deep philosophies don't have a restricted geography. Yeah. So Gandhi, of course, was fighting for India's freedom, but he was fighting as a human being. And 2 people who became very inspired by him was an Austrian woman who took on the Madeleine Slade, who took on the name Meera Behen, and a British woman from Sadla Behen. Because where Gandhi was in Wardha was very hot and they used to keep falling ill. So he said, go to the hills and do this work there. So the two of them started ashrams. And through that, a whole generation of young people were trained in Gandhian thought. And as I've written in my most recent book, Oneness versus the 1%, that even today, the instruments that were used for India's freedom are relevant to be free today. Swaraj, self-rule. Swadeshi making. You know, we've been told we are just consumers. If we are consumers, we are going to die because most people are being thrown out of the right to life. It breaks my heart. When I studied in Canada, it was such a public-oriented society. Universal healthcare, universal education. You know, newspapers didn't even have locks on them. Yeah, you just picked it up and put your coin. Go across the border to New York, locks on locks on locks on locks. And, I think Mike Moore made that beautiful film, Bowling for Columbine, where he crossed the border and said, how come Canada is so different? But now I'm seeing these images of Indigenous women being shot at. I'm seeing these images of people. First of all, no one was homeless in Canada when I was there. But now people are homeless and they're being criminalized for being on the streets. This is in Canada, I don't know. So I think that what basically has happened is we've been made to forget that with nature, we can produce everything we need. And Gandhi had a very beautiful saying, the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. And that's what the women of Chipko were practicing. But the ultimate is not obeying unjust law, satyagraha. Absolutely. Yeah? The force of truth. And Martin Luther King practiced it. Mandela, Desmond Tutu, who we've just lost, all of them practice it. But this is humanity's timeless way of staying free against brute law, against brutal rulers. So Chipko practiced all of this. And when you ask about knowingly and consciously and, about ecology, I remember one particular moment where, earlier the commercial contractors used to go to the hills and destroy the forest. So the government said, okay, we'll make contractors local. So local people will have a vested interest to continue to do logging. So they gave this contract to a man, the chief of a village, and his wife, Bachni Devi, rose against her own husband. And they marched to the forest with lanterns. And when the police was there and the forest was, and they said, can't you see the sun is out? Why are you bringing, you stupid women, why are you bringing lanterns? And they said, the lanterns are not for the sun, it's for you. Because you think these are timber mines. They're for profits, they're for cutting, they're for logging. For us, these are sources of our soil, our water, our air, and our oxygen. And this is the basis of life. So this is what we have learned in our life, and this is what we want you to learn. And that's why the lantern is for you. But one little aside matter. So this was in the 70s in my mountain region. I come from the central Himalaya. I come from Doon Valley. And my father worked in this middle, where comes into plains. This is where I walked, trekked with my dad. But there was a Chipko 300 years ago in the desert of Rajasthan. Oh. Now, Rajasthan is a desert, but it's the most populated desert of the world. And how is it populated? Because they've had saints and sages who said, don't destroy nature. Treat your water body as sacred. Build tanks. That's why Rajasthan has so many tanks. Treat your species that protect your desert as sacred species, the Khejuri tree. And there's a religion of 29 rules, the Bishnoi religion. And they just declared 21 aspects of nature as sacred. That was the religion, protect this. So the king's men came to cut the Khejuri tree for firing the limestone for painting the palace. And then a woman called Amrita Devi, I feel so blessed this year I got the Amrita Devi award from a Rajasthan university. So 300 years ago, she said, you cannot cut that tree. You'll have to take my neck before you take that tree. And she put her neck down and they cut her. Then her two daughters came, they cut her. 273 people died. In our Chipko, nobody died. But in the Rajasthan Chipko, the first Chipko, more than 200 people died for a tree called the Khejuri tree. So
really,
I think if we look at the indigenous cultures all over the world, this is what they share. They share the fact that we are children of Mother Earth. The earth is our mother. Nature is not dead raw material. The earth is our mother. And that's the civilizational conflict between the civilizing, colonialism and the civilized indigeneity, that we are part of the earth. The second is all of nature is sacred. Third is our duty is to protect nature and put limits, to do no harm. And this is what the story of Chipko is. And in a different way, all those amazing people who are fighting against the pipelines and the fracking in Canada.
May I ask you?
They're doing a Chipko. Yeah.
I want to ask you about Rajasthan. I remember being at a beautiful, I don't know whether to call it a palace, something I took a trip there once out in the desert. There's this beautiful old ruin of the king lived there somehow ages ago. You know the place I'm thinking of?
There are many palaces in Rajasthan.
Okay.
And most palaces have a lake next to them. Udaipur, Jaipur has many lakes. Jaisalmer, Jodhpur.
What I'm wondering is, I don't remember a lake there. I just remember it was real desert. And what I was wondering from your description of the forest in Rajasthan, which I don't remember forest being there now, and I wonder if there had been a desertification in living memory. That is, was that once fertile forest land, or was it always a desert? And if it had been desertified, what is your notion about what caused it?
Yeah. Okay. So, of course, the answer is very complex because Rajasthan has many ecosystems. There are parts that are even today dense forests, like the Udaipur region, full dense forests. There are other parts where trees were planted. So what I'm talking about, the Khejuri, is not a forest tree, it's a farm tree. It's planted on farms to feed the camels. It's planted on farms to give you fodder in this dry time. Bean is a wonderful vegetable, so it's a multi-purpose tree on farms. But there is desertification, and the desertification is spreading the desert. There was a desert, they call it Thar Desert, but it's spreading towards Delhi as farms become chemical monocultures and forests are cut down. Between Rajasthan and Delhi, there's a beautiful range called the Aravalli, and it breaks the sand, it breaks the winds, and now that is real estate. You see, I don't know this word called real estate. Yeah, the greed, I would call it the greed estate that converts every piece of land into investment. Mm-hmm. And they are a big threat, and that definitely is spreading desertification. So desertification is a real problem. Globally, it's a very big problem. In 2015 was the year of soil, but it was also the year the refugees were drowning in the Mediterranean. And I said, I'm going to look at the combination. I'm going to look at the refugee crisis and the desertification crisis together. And we did this beautiful manifesto called Terra Viva, Our Soil, Our Commons, Our Future. And we tried to connect the refugee crisis. Why are people leaving their homes? Because their lands are getting desertified. Why are their lands getting desertified? Because you ignore the laws of the earth. You tried to put water-intensive commodity vegetables to export in lands that should have had a few trees and some millets. Yeah. So
are you talking of the Syrian thing? Because I know that there was a migration of farmers from Syria to cities as a result of the drought. and
Yeah.
they were recruited there into militias because they had nothing else to do, having moved away from their
Yeah.
farms. And this is
So,
one of the grounds for
yeah.
the emergence of the Syrian War.
Yes, you're so right, Veda. We've looked at two cases in our report. Teraviva people can go to the website of Navdanya International to find those manifestos, but they can come to the website of navdanya.org in India that shares the work we do on seeds and organic farming and building community and regenerating the earth. So we looked at two cases. One was Lake Chad, which used to be a 22,000 square kilometer lake. But with globalization, 80% of the water that used to go into the lake was being diverted to irrigate commodity farms.
Oh.
Because everything was about commodity.
Where was this again?
Lake Chad is between four countries, Nigeria, Chad, and two, I think Mali, and one more. So it's surrounded by four countries.
So there's that much export commodification in Africa too.
Very big. Yeah,
that's an education for me to learn that, because I just assumed that most farming in Africa was still small holdings of.
No, wherever there's water, there's commercial farming now, and it's outside businesses who take it up. So what that did, and this is so important, what that did was the water shrunk. 80% of the water is gone. So the lake has shrunk, but it has fishing folk, depending on it has pastoralists, it has farmers. Now they're all fighting for a little bit of water. So suddenly there are conflicts, and it so happens, because of the history of Africa, that the settled communities became Christians, and the pastoralists were converted earlier into Islam. So the pastoralists are Muslim and the farmers are Christian because of the way conversions went over history. So as these farmer and pastoralist conflicts grew, they were named Christian and Muslim conflicts, but they weren't. They were water conflicts. But let's come back to Syria, which is what you were referring to. Now, Syria, people forget, it is the Fertile Crescent. It is where crops were domesticated. It was the origin of so much civilization. But the Green Revolution, which became the reason I started to look at agriculture, and we can come to that issue later, but the Green Revolution was also implemented in Syria. Now, Syria is an arid land. It has a few rivers, but it's an arid land. Chemical agriculture, which is the name for the Green Revolution, uses 10 times more water to grow the same amount of food. So you have to mine the water. It's not getting replenished at that level. And mining the water means your wells are getting drier and drier and drier, and it takes one drought to make the well dry, totally dry. That's what happened in 2009. A severe drought added to all the destruction of the Green Revolution, and the farmers got displaced. 75% of the animals died, and the farmers went to the cities first to protest, saying, give us support. World Bank came in. I don't know how familiar you are with the World Bank conditionalities. The World Bank said, no, you cannot support your farmers. Yeah, they don't allow support to farmers. And, Indian farmers have protested for 14 months against laws that the World Bank had framed in 91, but they got implemented last year during the COVID lockdown. But it was part of structural adjustment. You can't support your farmers. You can't support your farmers. So in India, farmers fought back 14 months. And I'm sure you've seen these images of the 14-month farmers' protests around Delhi. They were all over the world. And given that Canada and Toronto have so many Sikhs, I'm sure those messages were reaching all of you. But Syria, the same was done. And the farmers got no support. And then the militias were waiting, and the warmongers were waiting to sell more weapons. And then they started a war that nobody knows what the war is about, and nobody knows when it will end. We do know it's about oil at the end of it, but a beautiful culture has been devastated.
Absolutely. Now, when I first heard of you, the cause that you were working on was the preservation of the right to plant one's own seeds again and again. That the apparently big commercial seed distributors, corporations, control the certain seeds, and the farmers are not allowed to save their seeds and preserve the biodiversity. Can you speak a little bit about that? I know that that was a very big cause of yours 20 years ago, and I wonder how it's going. And can you give people a view about that issue?
Yes. It still is my deepest passion, saving seeds, sharing seeds, and defending the right of the seed as a living being, as holding, as the source of life, the source of food. Why did I start saving seed? Because I'd done the study on the Punjab Green Revolution. You know, I'd studied in Punjab for my particle physics.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did my MSc honors in particle physics in Punjab University. So I knew a very peaceful and prosperous Punjab. And by the 80s, it had exploded into violence. And 4th of June, the military was sent. And I had to understand what happened. I said, how come Norman Borlaug got a Nobel Peace Prize for something that he has read ruins, you know? Everywhere there's bloodshed, 30,000 people died. And the Nobel Peace Prize and 30,000 dead didn't make sense to me. So I had to go into the depth. And I was working those for a program on conflicts over resources for the United Nations University. So I said, you know, I've looked at forests and rivers, but this seems to be important. Can I look at it? And I wrote a book called The Violence of the Green Revolution. 3 years later, I get invited to a conference to the new biotechnologies about it's called the law of life. There were no GMOs in 1987. 92 is the first GMO. But the corporations who had been chemical companies in Hitler's Germany became agrochemical companies after the war, were now wanting to become seed corporations. And the way they were planning this, and they laid it out, they said, we have to do genetic engineering in order to take a patent on seed. And through the patents, we will make it illegal for farmers to grow seed. And we will have a monopoly on seed and collect rents and royalties. And to make sure this happens on a world scale, we must have an international law, which became the intellectual property laws of WTO. So that day in March of 1987, I decided I'm going to save seeds. I said, how can 4 toxic companies control the seed? How can they claim they've made the seed and created the seed? How can they live in a world where GMO for them means God move over? You know, you are nobody. Creation is nobody. Nature is nobody. We are the creators, and we will collect the rents. So I started saving seeds, began small, and where did I start? Back to the Chipko villages. That I knew women in those villages.
Of course.
I take books from my parents' library and show them images. I said, you grow this crop. I knew nothing about agriculture, nothing. I knew nothing about seed. I take the books from my parents' library, go to women of Chipko whom I knew, and said, you grow this? And they said, yes. I said, save it, don't let it go. I'd go to the men in front. Do you grow this? No, we grow soya bean. We grow cash crops. And the women would giggle at the back and say, they think that cash crop is running the family. It's the food we grow that's running the family. And so bit by bit we collected, and I have right now, while I'm talking to you, we have a beautiful exhibition in Delhi called Krishi Aur Kala, which means agriculture and crafts. And we have brought an exhibition of rice diversity. We've saved 4,000 varieties of rice in Navdanya. India had evolved 200,000 rice varieties.
Oh, my.
But many of these varieties have salt tolerance. Of course, the Gates and the Monsantos want to patent it. We find them. These varieties are aromatic. My beautiful, beautiful basmati from the Dehradun Valley, a company in Texas patented it. We fought them. And I have had actions with students in British Columbia and students in other universities in Canada while visiting, because this basmati biopiracy was, you know, everyone eats basmati. Everyone knows basmati. And here was this company claiming to have invented it, and the aroma and the plant and the seed and even methods of cooking. Yeah. So it's work that is now 30 years old, 34 years old, and I'm just literally in between. I've come to you, but I'm writing. The companies that wanted to own all the seed haven't given up. They're trying to come through the back door through new laws, and I'm reading line by line and preparing for our parliament. And
now, how
the seed.
You've won some victories.
Every case we have fought against thieves and liars and cheats, we have won.
You have
because
won.
Truth
Perfect. Your magnificent work. It's just excellent.
I'll give you the three cases, Meta. So there's a beautiful tree called the neem in India.
Yes.
The neem.
Yes.
And its scientific name is Agaricta indica. In the villages, they use it for a toothbrush. It's called the village pharmacy. You can use it for everything. It's used for pest control. And when the
I brush my teeth with neem sticks, right?
Yes. So I took these neem saplings to Bhopal. I said, no more Bhopals. Let's plant a neem. Why do we need pesticides that kill people? Union carbide killed people in Bhopal. 10 years later, I find it's patented. 11 years we fought the US government and W.R. Grace on this piracy patent of neem. 11 years it took us, but we had their patent overturned. The basmati patent, we had it overturned.
Wonderful.
And in the case of Monsanto wanted to own all the gluten-free wheats of the world. People are confused. They think wheat causes gluten allergy. Breeding of wheat with uniformity and breeding of wheat for industrial processing is what causes gluten allergy. So they were after our ancient wheats for the market for the gluten allergy victims. And the minute we heard this, we challenged them, and literally they dropped their patent at the doorstep of the European Patent Office and ran. And so there are three legal cases, but morally we have won everywhere. We have managed to put even in the WTO that piracy is not the way to patent. But, like I said, they're trying again. And as you know, with years and years and years of work, that the untruth loses for a while, but it never gives up. And it comes back in another form and in another form and in another form. And so the other lesson I've learned from the seed is to never give up. Keep bouncing back. Lie latent for a while if you have to. Keep bouncing back. Germinate when the time is right.
You have a farm of your own that you administer. Nav something.
Navdanya. Navdanya means 9 seeds, but it also means the new gift. Nav is 9, and Danya is green, but Nav can also be new, and Dan is the gift. So Navdanya stands for biodiversity because above 9 is again 1 and 0. You can't go beyond 9.
Okay.
It's the highest symbol of diversity. And the new gift is the reclaiming of the commons. Yeah. Because the Monsantos want to own the seed as their private intellectual property. We believe seed belongs to the web of life, to the farmers, to the communities to exchange. And the word, let me tell you this little story, Meta. So I started Seed Saving 87. I just used to call it the seed saving movement. And I was out seed collecting in a remote village in South India where the sandalwood smuggler, Veerappan, used to be. Yeah. Now, he had a big mustache and he used to kidnap people and film stars and all. People were very scared of him. So the agriculture scientists never went to his area. So chemicals never reached, monocultures never reached. So they had their ancient farming, ancient varieties. So I went there to collect seeds. And this field of a tribal farmer collecting, because I've done the study on monocultures of rice and wheat in Punjab. And I'm looking at this field with 9 crops. And I said, wow, you're growing 9 crops. And he says, yes, Navdanya. And I said, you say it with such wisdom. Is it more than just the number 9? And, he literally looked at me, you stupid urban people. You get your degrees and you don't know anything. And he gave me this beautiful discourse, how the 9 planets, because in Indian astronomy, we have 7 planets and 2 shadow planets for the right calculations. Yeah. Our calculations of astronomy are so accurate. So these are the 9 planets, the 9 crops in my field, and the balance and harmony in our bodies is one harmony. It's one piece. And I have a duty to maintain it. That's why I grow 9 crops.
Oh, okay. Now you grow.
That's why we call it Navdanya.
Okay, so I wasn't aware that the name actually refers to the number of crops that you grow there. Is that what you're saying? 9 crops?
No. Now Navdanya is the symbol of diversity. We grow 2,000 varieties of crops on the farm.
Okay.
750 rice varieties.
Oh my.
250 wheat varieties. Another probably 100 kinds of beans and pulses. More than 200 tree species that have all kinds of functions. And that's not all. We use no chemicals. So we use no Roundup. And in 1 square foot of our land, 1 square foot, this much, I counted 12 useful species that are called weeds by Monsanto. They spray them to death. 4 of them were edible. 4 were edible, and the rest were medicinal. So we have a village pharmacy there. Get a toothache, I can go pick up the akarkara. You have a problem, jaundice, go get the bhui amla. Yeah, right there.
Oh, for heaven's sake. For heaven's sake. Now, who are the people living and working there? It sounds like an enormous operation. You tell me about the whole thing. Did somebody give you a big tract of land, or how did you start this whole operation?
See, my mother used to have a farm and she became a refugee from Pakistan, and I sold part of that. So part of it is that, but a part of it is owned by the trust Navdanya. I started by buying personally, but later then Navdanya built up. So it's many pieces together, and but we work it as one integrated system. We call it the biodiversity farm. It's a conservation farm. We have a seed bank. It's a living seed bank. We grow out all these 2,000 varieties every year with love. Every year. We do a lot of research and science and experiments, and our research has shown that the more the biodiversity, the more the food, and therefore you can feed people not by reducing biodiversity, but by increasing it. Monocultures are a stupid way to go.
Yes.
On a plant,
okay. Maybe you can. One of the questions that comes up, and I think has to be really clearly resolved, is whether organic and natural farming will be able to feed the growing population that we have to expect in the next generation, and especially given the fact that we're going to have all this global warming, that it will be destroying some of the land that now is fertile.
So 2 aspects to that. Now that I've spent more than 35 years doing the study, and I've done it with all the love and dedication that I put into my quantum theory PhD, the only way we can feed people is through biodiversity and organic. Biodiversity because it intensifies the processes of nature, and organic because it builds on the cycles of renewal and regeneration. Yeah. So what do you work with for fertility? You put back organic matter into the soil, and that builds up the soil fertility. Mm-hmm. When you increase plants together, there is more nutrition per acre. Of course, if you want to grow commodities, you get these row crops. And for the commodity, that's higher production. But for the biology, it's lower production. Mm-hmm. Biology and trade are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Food is a biological phenomenon, an interaction between the soil, the plants, animals, humans. We all work together. And in that unified system, the measure should be nutrition per acre, not yield per acre. Yield is what leaves the land. Nutrition is what flows through the system. Mm-hmm. And our work, and we've done reports on this, they're available from our website of navdanya.org. We can feed 2 times India's population with full nutrition. Not malnutrition, all the nutrients we need. The second, on the climate issue. Now, most of our varieties have been bred for climate resilience. Nutrition density and climate resilience. The old varieties have those qualities. So with less acreage, we grow more nutrition. And because the seeds are bred for resilience, you might have a drought, but it'll survive. You might have a flood, it'll survive. You might have a cyclone. Yeah. So of course, different places have different problems, and there are different seeds for all of this. Mm-hmm. And our research has also shown that when your soil is organic, whether it's a drought or a flood, it acts as a cushion. Yeah. You have a drought, but if there's organic matter, you have moisture in the soil, you'll get a crop. Mm. If you have organic matter, the flood will not run off. I was looking at the images of the German floods this year, and I can make out these are industrial farms that washed away. But in ecological farms, you'd have had strong organic matter buildup. 0.5% of organic matter holds 80,000 liters. That's the difference between a flood and no flood, a drought and no drought. So ecology is the answer. And I've just done a new report in time for Glasgow and the climate havoc, and I'm doing a course on the 9th for those who might want to join on climate change and the living earth. We need to wake up again, that the earth has her systems. We were made to forget them because we were told the earth is dead, the earth is dead, the earth is dead. We've got to come alive to the fact that the earth is living. And we have capacity to work non-violently, peacefully with the living earth. And then we start to solve the climate problem.
I do a lot of talk shows like this with people who are interested in regenerative agriculture. And I keep hearing more comments along the lines that you were making from people that I would have expected to be in the pockets of big corporate agriculture. But people teaching at Guelph University, for example, are doing work on exactly the value of things of the kind that you're discussing. I think there seems to be more awareness of what you're saying, although I don't know how much contact there is actually between people doing similar research that you do in other parts of the world. How much are you finding, are you working together? And how much would you say, how much contact would you have with, for example, the people teaching at Guelph University, teaching organic farming and organic, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so, I do have a relationship with Guelph because to do my PhD in Western, I had to do a second master's in philosophy of science. So that I did at Guelph. And, and there are 3 universities that gave me honorary doctorates. A second doctorate from the University of Western Ontario. The University of Guelph gave me a doctorate, and the University of Toronto did. And I will never forget the University of Guelph doctorate because, Guelph being an agriculture university, there is a lot of money from the big companies. And the president, when he was awarding me, and he gave, they give you the speech of why they're giving you the thing. And he said, to remind ourselves that universities are public systems meant for the public good. Yeah. So I'm not that much in touch with the agriculture people of Guelph, but globally we have a Regeneration International movement. We've joined hands. And we've realized that you cannot have a extractive agriculture based on fossil fuels and chemicals. You cannot have taking without giving. You have to regenerate, you have to give back. And many of us are scientists, many of us are farmers, and we join hands. So this Regeneration Internationalism movement we started. And from there, a lot of companies are picking up the language, sometimes with full integrity and sometimes with good lip service. But our work is to keep the integrity alive and the practice of that integrity alive. That's our work. Our work is in service of the earth, in service of truth.
Let me throw something unexpected at you, controversial, let's say. I have interviewed a number of people about agriculture. There's one man named Tom Newmark, who has an organic farm in Costa Rica, and who is the head of some kind of organization called the Carbon Underground. And his interest is in trying to show how to build up the carbon in the soil through good regenerative farming. But his approach is quite different, I imagine, from yours. And I wonder about your opinion, because I'm surprised that he said it, and I don't know whether he's right or not. But he says, when we were talking about how can these new discoveries be disseminated more widely around the world so that they can be implemented quickly, because if you learn how to do something that's beneficial to the soil, people should know about it, and most things take a while. And he said that he thought that the source of the progressive changes along these lines actually will come from the big food corporations, because he said they are now aware that they're mining the soil, that we're depleting the nutrients in the soil, and that we don't have a future for agriculture unless we make these changes. So he said these big corporations do know that it's essential, and they are, because they buy the produce from small farmers or local outfits, they are going to be the ones putting pressure on the farmers to adopt these regenerative practices, and that they will be the beneficial energy to make this change take place, which I found very surprising. And I kind of assumed that you probably wouldn't agree. Tell me what you think about how to spread knowledge best among farmers worldwide about how to improve the quality of their farming.
Well, I know Tom well, and in fact, the Regeneration International movement we launched at his farm in Costa Rica.
Is that right?
So we've done that together.
He's the sweetest man. I like him so much, but I didn't know whether.
And the other day he wrote a good piece called "Don't Call Mother Nature a Sink." That she's not just a sink for carbon. And the sink doesn't get filled up. Grows. So we actually did. I asked my team. I said, let's do a piece on regeneration and living carbon in the soil and in the plants. So we are in close touch. I think Tom is speaking from his context. He's in North America. In North America, the big players are the food businesses. Small farmers have as good as disappeared. Yeah. So he's quite clearly talking from within his context. Where do you make the shift? I'm in a land of small farmers. Yeah. 60% of India is farming, and all of them are small farmers. They were the ones sitting on the streets of Delhi to say, we want to be farmers. We want to stay stall farmers. We will not be driven off our land by agribusiness. We will not allow globalization to eat us up like small farmers have been eaten up in other countries. So the contexts are different in different countries. I think the principles are the same. These are the laws of nature. And in my view, the two laws of nature that can't be broken. It could be by a big business or a little farmer. The first is the law of diversity. And this is the law I've learned to respect more and more and more. Nature never works in uniformity. Nature never works in monocultures. The second is what we call the law of return, what Liebig called the recycling. You've got to give back. So extractivism, colonialism, the fossil fuel age was an extractive age. You take, you take, you take. And you leave the land impoverished, you leave people in poverty. On the other hand, the law of giving is, in my view, the economy of the future. It has been the economy that sustains societies over time, but it will be the economy of the future. And those who are able to practice it and learn, because there's a careless technology and a careless economy. Throw the urea, spray the poison, easy, very easy. And you get used to that lethargy. And then the other where you take pride in care. And caring is not easy. I brought up a baby. Bringing up a child is not easy, but it is fulfilling. And therefore, I think it's time to get out of the fossil fuel addiction. Get rid of work, get rid of work. Work is drudgery, unskilled work, and all these hierarchies of women don't work, all these artificial constructions. We've got to reclaim the creativity of our heads, hearts, and hands with the creativity of the earth. That is regeneration. It's our regeneration and earth regeneration together.
Beautiful. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm so pleased that there is even in what I thought would be a controversial topic, that you find some common ground with Tom Newmark, because obviously a lot of other people working along the same lines in other places. That's marvelous.
Wonderful, Meta. Lovely talking to you.
Just a delight to meet you, and I thank you for your work. It is just such a service to humankind, and and you have such a charm about such enthusiasm that it's infectious. I feel peppy now, having spent an hour with you. I'll go spend my day much better than I would have otherwise. So bless you. Thank you so much.
Say hello to all the friends, and bye.
This is episode 396, Saving Trees, Seed, and Earth with Vandana Shiva. If you want to watch this, I hope you will, go to the website to savetheworld.ca, and you can enter in the search bar the episode number 396, or the name Vandana Shiva, or the title of the show. And you can do that for any of our shows and see a whole bunch of different discussions, or listen to them as podcasts, or read them as transcripts. Now, after you've done so, I hope you'll give us your own thoughts. Scroll down and to the comments column and post your own ideas about these issues. Hope to see you there. Bye.